All right, so I'm going to jump into the second game that I'm doing today, even though you played this on a different day. Hopefully, we'll look for a little bit more creative things. So, we're playing Rakan, Callista into Caitlyn Morgana. So, I feel like Morgana is kind of a little bit of a counter to Rakan in a way. Like, the Black Shield can deny the Rakan knockup in the earlier phases of the lane, so that's like so I would say obviously you're going to start like W level 1. So there's a chance there. And Morgana's probably going to start Q level 1. Now level 2, she's probably level 1 she's going to start Q, right? Level 2, she's probably going to go W because it's low elo. As you move into higher rank, she might start taking E level 2 depending on what she thinks about the gank ability of the jungler, if her jungler can respond, how susceptible is her ADC to actually getting all in at level 2. This is Caitlyn. So Caitlyn's going to outrange both of you pretty heavily. So I think that she's probably going to take the W level 2. Even in higher rank. Like there's not you'd have to there'd have to be something go like egregiously bad for you to actually get onto her and stick onto her. So she's probably not going to take E in this type of a game. If this were to pop up in high elo, she probably doesn't take E level 2. So level 3 is when she's going to get the E. So you know that you have a window of opportunity here when she doesn't have E to look for something onto the Caitlyn. But after level 3, there's probably not going to be too much there just because Caitlyn's already going to outrange you so much anyways, and then Morgana's Black Shield is kind of going to deny things. So that's just kind of my impression of the lane in a vacuum. Now, from the perspective of the jungler, I don't know how gankable you guys are to a Rammus. And I'm looking around at the other lanes and I'm seeing like Shen. So Rammus could potentially gank Shen. And Rammus could potentially gank Lux. So I'm not seeing too many like scenarios in which Rammus especially wants to gank you guys. Just because Callista's kind of flighty, right? Even early, it's not very much, but it's still something, like with the little hops and stuff. So I don't know. I mean, Rammus, if he can find the angle, maybe there's something there. But if he can't find a really good angle, I think Callista just gets away. And if Callista gets away, you have double dash to her. So unless you don't have like a cooldown or something, which again just relies on, like if Rammus can find a really opportune gank, then you can definitely set something up. But how afraid are we of Rammus? Probably not too much in this game. And then the 3v3, again, really boils down to what type of angles can Rammus get, and then how much can Morgana deny you. Because Graves isn't going to offer too much in a 3v3. He's pretty much only damage, and he's got Conquerors, so he doesn't even have like a ton of burst or anything like that. He's more going for like a little bit tankier, a little bit more damage oriented build. Just out of the runes. Like burst Graves would look like Dark Harvest or Electrocute, even though most Graves are not running Electrocute these days. Just to say, like if he does go Electrocute, you could see some burst damage. But Conqueror shows that he's kind of going to get increasing damage over time, and then he's going to become a little bit tankier because of the 15% lifesteal that Conqueror affords him when he fully stacks it up. So Graves is not really looking to just show up and one-shot somebody and leave. That's what this tells me anyways. I don't know what this Graves is going to do, but that's what the rune choice tells me. So the way that 3v3s play out, like if Graves does like match a Rammus gank or counter a Rammus gank, it really boils down to like what Morgana can deny you and what Rammus can find. And then if you can find a play. But pre-6 is going to be pretty hard for you to do that. So I would give the edge to this team for like pre-6 3v3. Post-6 3v3, they probably still have an edge, but you have more outplay potential at that point. Wish those game sounds this time. That's pretty nice. Yeah, because he muted the Discord on the recording, so this is good.
To Summoner's Rift.
I enjoy actually having the game sounds whenever I watch these things back, even though I play with a lot of the game sounds muted myself. I do think that the sounds are well done, so that's nice.
But it is less complicated.
We gotta just take a peek. Doesn't look like Rammus is gonna invade. We wouldn't expect it anyways. Come on over, get Oathsworn. All of that's fine.
Evil loves me. Self-control is for star nerds.
Okay, so Graves actually elects to start his blue buff. Now what this could mean is that Graves is looking for like a full clear top to bot. And so potentially he can show up in bottom lane with a red buff and potentially get something done. And we acknowledged that levels 1 and 2 are the only like consistent, reliable times that you would be able to do anything. Even like post 6, how reliable is it? Because like Kalista ult can be outplayed. Like if both of you burn ult, then it's actually kind of reliable. It's pretty reliable, but even then against like Black Shield, and then if binding happens to hit or something like that, like Morgana can easily deny what Kalista Rakan want to do. So like it although it feels very reliable, I don't actually know if it is, depending on the skill level of this Morgana. So because we acknowledge that 1 and 2 are the levels that we're looking for something, I actually don't like this fake leash. Because what this is going to end up doing is giving their lane priority pretty much the entire time. Because Caitlyn is going to be able to shove us under tower. Obviously, Caitlyn and Morgana have superior wave clear to us, so we're not going to be able to do very much. And so it already feels like you've just resigned yourself to play Farming Simulator under your tower until the enemy team get bored, or until the enemy team take your tower and then just leave, or until they get bored and just leave. But either way, it just feels like this lane is going to be Farming Simulator. If instead you had showed up and started shoving the wave, like you kill all 3 of the casters or something immediately. Like you don't want to hard shove and crash that wave, but you need to kill enough of the minions. Like let's say you take like 1 caster and then you focus down a melee creep and you get that melee creep because you have this, so it's quite easy, right? And then Callisto starts hitting another caster and you start maybe you wait and then take the second proc of Relic on the next melee or something like that. Like they can't contest the push at that point because you've gotten yourself like a 3 to 4 minion advantage, so they can't really contest the push. And so what that allows you to do is actually potentially crash the second wave into their tower. So if second wave crashes to their tower, second wave is they're not past, like, so they're still level 1 as it's hitting the tower, and then as it comes out there's going to be at least 1 more wave where they're level 2, depending on how Morgana manages the Caitlyn CS. Not the CS. How well Morgana manages Caitlyn's EXP. Then potentially they're still level 2 when... So this is first wave, right? Wave A. Wave A, we slow push. I'm going to put this a different way. Wave B, we crash. Wave C, we get pushed. So wave A, we're obviously level 1. Wave B, we're going to crash it. They are still going to be level 1 as it's crashing. And they might hit level 2 off of the crash, right? The second wave. Now, on wave C, when it starts to come out from the tower, they're still going to be level 2 for this wave C, which potentially could be the time that Graves is looking to make a play. Because at that point in time, like, so 130 spawns wave A. Let's just talk about how jungle timers line up with minion waves. So this is like 230. I think it's actually technically 5 seconds after. So instead of that being 130, call it 135. That's not right. Is it 115? So the next one would be 245. Sorry, 145. And this is like 215 or something. And that's the spawn times. Spawn times of the waves, not the time where it's actually going to take a while to walk down. So right around this like probably around like the 245 mark, the wave is we're gonna be in this wave C state where it's potentially pushing to us, and Graves could potentially have a red buff here, and so Graves could potentially, depending on his clear and all of that stuff, he could potentially be looking to be in the bottom lane as this wave is crashing, as everything is level 2, and so therefore you can actually look for a play here. And this is like the only chance that you almost somewhat consistently have. But after this, the game becomes difficult, and because you're not pursuing this line of thought, you're playing farming simulator under your tower. Because how do you get out from tower under those champions? I don't think you can.
The universe tends towards chaos. I'm just helping it along. I don't apologize for doing my thing.
I was 10 seconds off on the minion timers. It's 105, 135, 205. So like I used to know the old minion timers, which I think it was like 130 was the first spawn, but then they changed that shit a long time ago, and so sometimes I still get confused when I think about it. But 105 is first minion spawn, because I just watched this wave spawn, and it spawned at 205. You can see it's like halfway down the lane or something, and it's at 215 right now, so it spawned at 205. I was watching the map for that, which means that there has to be a wave in here at 135 and then 205. This doesn't change anything. Graves can take a path that's like blue to red to gank, and maybe it's a little bit cheesy, but it's the only opportunity that Graves has to put you guys in the game automatically. And then from there he can look to like almost do like a full clear backup like this. So that's kind of like an interesting, let me draw that a little bit differently. So he can go blue to red to gank. And then coming off of this, he can go Krugs to Raptors to Wolves to Grump and then Recall. So what's interesting about this is that it does seem a little bit cheesy, and maybe Graves does lose a camp for it if the enemy jungler decides to invade, but it's a Rammus, so he's probably not going to lose 2 camps for it. Like, the nature of Rammus as a champion is that he's kind of scared of, like, Rammus can almost be scared of getting invaded at times because Rammus isn't always the best 1v1er. And against Graves, especially with double buffs or even just with red buffs, like it's actually quite difficult for Rammus to get a good fight, even though Rammus can get the QEW onto Graves. That's not going to be enough to kill him, and then Graves can just chase him down with autos. So if Rammus kind of acknowledges that this is what Graves is doing, maybe Rammus gets 1 camp. But he's probably not going to get 2 camps, because if Rammus stays for Wolves, then Graves could potentially show up. And so Rammus has to be very respectful of that. So maybe Graves loses 1 camp at most for this. But what Graves ends up doing is he gives you an opportunity into the game early by potentially burning summoner spells and ganking double buff really, really strong. They're level 2. We talked about this. And then Graves gets to set himself into a path of a full clear, which is going to be advantageous for him because we acknowledge that it's actually quite difficult to make a play onto this bot lane post level 3. Even at level 6, it's not exactly perfect at all times. So Graves sort of like starting top to bottom and then reversing the clear after the gank bottom to top actually sets him in a position where he can look to do stuff in this lane, like Shen versus Warwick. Warwick's very gankable, pre-6. Very gankable. So even if he just does this path, he has the option to gank at the end of it, which he probably will if Gromp is not up, or he can look to just recall if Gromp is up. Even if Gromp's not up, he might just look to recall, and then at that point, potentially set up like a gank here and then reset into bottom and kind of follow this path again. But he's basically only going to be pathing like bot to top at this point in time, and then he can just camp the shit out of this Warwick. But that's sort of like Graves' choice. What he does after that initial bot to top is kind of his choice, but I don't think it would be that bad to keep the sequencing like that for a while anyways. Because you know, like Rammus doesn't really care about first dragon.
Because I'm free and I am free because
Even though Caitlyn Morgana can help him out a lot with it, there's not like ooh. So overall this is not very good. So Callista misses the Rend number 1. I knew that Rand wasn't going to kill the minion, and I don't even really play Callista that much, so that's kind of just like damage foresight. Even if you get the engage onto Caitlyn, what does this really do? Like, we talked about how we would like to, like, not even we would like to, but this is the only time that we can engage. So we hit level 2, and so we think, like, okay, we hit level 2. Here's the problem, though. Even if we hit this W onto Caitlyn, what is going to happen? Like, Caitlyn is going to get knocked up. In the game, not in real life. So Caitlyn's gonna get knocked up, and then probably just like walk back to like right here. You're gonna be in the center of the explosion radius. She can set trap. So boom, level 2. She has W, and boom, she can set up the headshot. Now Morgana has a free line to Q, which sets Caitlyn up to W again. And so you're going to take 2 headshots, guaranteed, plus the Q, which is also going to be followed up by W. And then Caitlyn can maybe choose to auto like 1 or 2 more times, depending on what Callista's doing. And this is just like guaranteed. This is static. There's no way for you to prevent this. Like, even if Caitlyn gets hit by this, so what? You know? Like, what Callista really wants to do is get this farm. What Callista really doesn't want to do is cover your ass going in. So you're just going to, like, and because of, like, the minions are here, like, there's nothing preventing this Q line from Morgana. So it's just really odd. It's a really odd decision to go in. It's not very good. And that's assuming that it even hit, which obviously it didn't. But that was like best case scenario. It hits. But you're not killing her anyways. Morgana could have queued like way earlier, actually, and so I don't know why she didn't, you know? Maybe it was on cooldown, maybe she's just bad, I don't actually know, but what you notice is that still, like, the minion line is like right here, right? And so you still don't have any minions, so she still just has a free Q line onto you. Now, one thing that you could have done as a bot lane, like obviously you have Guardian, so it's something that you should be thinking about. And so Callista could have actually like walked into you and saved you some of that damage because you'll get the Guardian shield, right? So you get some of that damage, but it's like objectively, like it's such a bad decision to go in. At this point, you almost just have to recall. And the problem with this is that, like, so we're playing against Warwick, so we're potentially giving more move speed to him. This doesn't really affect us that much because Warwick should be playing in the top lane, right? But let's say that Warwick decides to take like a really weird roam for some reason. He can actually go mid lane. So he's never going to show up in bottom lane, you know, like early like this. He's never just going to run to bottom lane. But let's say that there's a scenario in which Shen backs for some reason to get items and Warwick is able to shove that wave. So Warwick can then actually use the move speed from hunting you and actually go mid and get a really nice gank off quicker than what Lux would normally be able to expect it. And this is kind of just like set up now because you're not going to be able to get too much HP back for a while. So you're giving Warwick an option in this game. So it's especially bad. It's even worse than it normally would be. like that we're able to proc Guardian there. That's nice. So we use the potion and the biscuit, which is how we're able to heal so well. I think they hit 3 on this wave, right? So we need to be thinking about that a little bit. Okay, and now we're just stuck playing Farming Simulator. There's nothing for us here. Going in doesn't help us. That's so fucking odd. That's just so weird. Like, mostly that's set up because they take the turret shots. So maybe you see the turret shots and you say, like, fuck it, I'm going in. What if Caitlyn just doesn't auto you? You know? Like, what if Caitlyn just takes the knock up and then it's the same exact play? She walks a short distance away. She pops W. Morgana Qs. Same thing. Your minions are not going to block it because look at where the minion line is. So the minions are not going to block it. Even if they walk up like a little bit like this, then Morgana can walk a little bit lower and fire Q this way, right? Or depending on how the minions aggro, she can walk up higher, fire Q that way. So you're going to take Q like no matter what. This is going to lead to getting another W. So you're just again giving Caitlyn the same thing you just did before. It's like we just did the same exact thing. Instead, Caitlyn decides to auto you because Caitlyn is like an ape or something. I'm not sure like what species of animal Caitlyn is, but whatever it is belongs on a zoo. It doesn't make that engage good. It makes Caitlyn like even worse than not good.
I only believe in myself. And
At this point, we soft push this wave, we hard shove the next, and then just look to reset. That's pretty standard. There's no point in going for vision here because we're going to recall on the next wave. So just help your ADC. Just stand there so that Morgana can't actually fuck with her and get her off the wave. Like right now, Morgana's fucking with her, so it's delaying this. Okay, go recall right now. Somehow you got the wave under tower before it crashed even though you weren't there, so count your blessings and go recall right now. Like, I know Callista has gold right now.
most good guys are just kidding themselves.
19 CS. She's got enough for tier 2s. She's got to have enough for tier 2s right now. Graves is picking this gank, but we kind of talked about this. This is kind of, like, in my opinion, this is just not a very good decision by Graves. Yeah. And so in the 3v3 now I expect like them to have the edge, like we talked about this. I think that they hard win pre 6 and then like post 6 it kind of boils down to what opportunities you can find, but I think they still innately have the edge. It's the onus is on you to win the 3v3, not them. Teleport has to be committed here. I don't know if Shen's allowed to just teleport in lane like this because Warwick can interrupt the teleport, so I don't know if Shen has the information to know that Warwick's E is on cooldown. I'm not exactly sure. It's actually so bad for Shen now. Like, so I don't know what the state of top
Life
lane
is
is. I hope
way
you
more
press tab
fun
on your way
when you give
back
up
to
the
lane.
rules.
Okay. Um, I don't know. Like, I think Warwick should just have opportunities to start, like, freely winning in top lane. I mean, Shen kind of, like, counters Warwick to an extent, but Warwick it scales a little bit better as a duelist, I think. Like, in my opinion, I don't have a ton of experience with Warwick top, but he's got Conqueror, and his passive scales with levels, as does Conqueror. So the longer the game goes, I think the harder time Shen is actually going to have to 1v1 him. So Warwick got insane value out of this. The fact that that entire play
Rules.
like worked out the way that it did doesn't make anything that I said like untrue. It was just bad. It ended up working. We could click around the map and kind of watch the lane states. What's Warwick doing right now? Oh, man, Warwick actually didn't take the base. This Warwick is so bad.
Used to be a squid. Then I embraced the darkness. Woohoo!
This Warwick literally just gave Shen back the lane. Warwick could have just backed off and let the wave crash in and base and taken a free fucking reset. Shen would have felt so bad.
Doing the right thing was boring.
We're back to farming simulator. The fact that we got like a good setup or whatever, the fact that we got lucky on the teleport essentially doesn't change anything. Like we're still playing farming simulator and there's still like no way that we can actually do anything in this lane. See? That right there is the reason why. Right? Like that right there is the reason why we can't do anything. We're playing farming simulator.
Darkness is the new high.
And that's the price of trying to not play Farming Simulator. See Callisto's HP? That's what happens when you don't play Farming Simulator. You have to play by the rules of this lane. Caitlyn Morgana, like with the lane that you guys are playing, Caitlyn Morgana is basically just a fucking jigsaw trap.
Safe.
So if you don't play by the rules, like you just die, right? Even if you do play by the rules, you're probably gonna get hurt by it. You're probably gonna bleed in some way. Let's assume that they're going to back. They don't really have the mana. I don't hate the idea of trying to stop the back there, but why not do it with Q? Why do it with W? Because why is the audio so fucked up on this? It seemed like you're dropping frames, so I'm not sure why the audio's fucked up on this. Maybe YouTube had a fucking stroke when it was processing this video or something. Oh, I hate that when I try muting that. So I think that we soft shove this wave as well, and then we hard shove the next one.
Can say the same.
Because we can. Like look at the relative position of the lane here. So the minion line, switch this color. The minion line's right here. Okay. So normally, like lanes can go two ways. Like whenever you approach this and you're losing, like you're obviously in a losing matchup. So even though like you're finding advantages because of the teleport, because of Graves and them playing the lane a little bit awkward, you have some advantages, but that doesn't mean that you can just fight them. They'll just kill you. So normally what we say is like, okay, this is wave A. So normally we soft push, and then wave B, we crash, right? But in this case, we have a minion wave lock really close to our tower. It's really close to our tower, right? So we don't have to follow this. I mean, we still can, but we can get more out of it if we play wave A, we slow push. Wave B, we slow push. Wave C, we crash. So this just allows us to get a little bit more minions and a little bit more golden XP before we crash the wave, which potentially allows us to do things like maybe get a little bit closer to an item, get a little bit better of a component, uh, get a little bit closer to the next level. It also makes it that much harder for them to retaliate. So, in general, when we're in a position where we can't really kill our opponents, we want to stack as many waves as possible. But because this is like a vacuum situation, like this is a fresh minion wave coming in, and we have a fresh minion wave reinforcing, like there wasn't an existing wave state that we walked into, the most waves that we can stack is 3 before it will crash into their tower. So like wave A will lock here, wave B will probably lock like somewhere in the center, somewhere, and wave C will lock like on the top of the lane, somewhere like right here. And so we can like easily crash that into their tower because it will be close to their tower, and we'll have so many minions to help us push as well by that point. So the opponent can anticipate this and counterplay it, but this is like what we want to do.
Can say the same.
It's the only thing that really makes sense right now. I don't really understand the purpose of that ward.
Life sucks, but it is less complicated.
I like getting the Guardian there. The shields, but it doesn't really matter. And now, like, because you've given up your HP, we're back to playing Farming Simulator. If you didn't do that, like, so you don't have brush control. So let's take a look at this. Okay. So there's something in bot lane, kind of specifically. It does apply in top lane with very specific matchups, but like this is a term that gets brought into bot lane a lot. So the term is brush control. So what brush control means is, do you have the ability, literally, to control the brushes? Do you, like, are you able to walk into the brushes and prevent your opponent from walking into the brushes, or prevent your opponent from warding the brushes, or prevent like be able to attain vision on the brushes? All of that stuff plays into brush control. Just like we have objective control, and we talk about like, are you able to walk into the pit? Are you able to approach the pit from a distance? Can you get a ward on the pit? Like the same way that we think about objective control is how we think about the brushes in bottom lane. And so some champions will naturally have brush control, and you have to naturally cede brush control to these champions. A very common example of this in low elo is Blitzcrank. If Blitzcrank walks into a brush, and you see him walk into the brush, like say he's in this brush, okay, well, you can't kick him out of that brush. And then if he chooses to walk into this brush, you say, oh, fuck. Okay, either we're going to play way the fuck back so he can't hook us, or we'll play fucking on this side of the minion wave. And hopefully he doesn't take a flank angle on us. Or if he does, hopefully we can get this kill before Caitlyn collapses, right? If this is Blitzcrank. It's actually the same thing with Morgana. So we're going to assume that Morgana 6, I actually didn't look, but I mean, we can fast forward this a little bit and take a look right now. So, can we fight Morgana for the brush? No, because Morgana has CC, number 1, and number 2, she does more damage than us. So let's say that both of us throw our CC abilities. She throws Q and she misses, and we throw W and we miss. Then if we like walk up and we have like an auto attack war with Morgana, she ends up winning, right? Because she has pool, her W, and all you have is Q, which gives you a little bit of healing, but her pool is going to deal more damage. So in a vacuum, like just you versus Morgana, you lose brush control. You lose. So you have to give her this. And that's assuming that like both of you miss your CC abilities. If she hits you with Q, then you take even more damage, right? Okay, Morgana's actually 5. I don't know how Morgana's 5 because of how I mean, I guess they've been set behind in the wave, but that was fine. The fact that you have level advantage on Morgana still doesn't give you brush control, by the way. And I was just specifically talking in a vacuum a second ago about like Rakan versus Morgana and then basically having like a support war for the brushes, but it's not a vacuum obviously because you have Caitlyn here. And so since Caitlyn's going to be able to do more damage to you than Kalista will be able to do to Morgana, you simply just have to back out of this brush. I don't hate this ward. I kind of wish that you got this ward instead, but I think that was Kalista's ward. I don't think that was yours because you burned your ward putting it over here, which is a bad ward. By the way, this ward doesn't do anything for you. But this is Kalista's ward, so it's not really even on you. But I don't really like this ward. I wish it would have been in this brush. Anyways, Morgana has brush control in this lane, whether you like it or not, whether you have a level lead or not. And so it goes back to what I said like a second ago. Like, this is a jigsaw trap, and you have to play by the rules. And so the rules are Morgana has brush control over you, and you didn't play by the rules, and so you lost all of your HP as a result. And now, whereas you could have played the wave the way that I said, like we could have stacked 3 waves and then crash, now they're actually just able to thin the wave and then shove it back on you, and then you're back to playing Farming Simulator under your tower because you didn't play by the rules.
I love evil loves me.
Graves does have red buff. I don't hate that. It could have been played better, but I don't hate it. Let's talk about how it could be played better. So I like this. I actually really like that you're playing back. So you're almost like baiting them, you know? You're using your ADC to bait. I like this. Okay. Right here, we see that Morgana has black shielded herself. So that's an important piece of information. Now you ult the Caitlyn. But then what you immediately do is actually run into this brush and try to ult the Morgana too. Which is kind of odd. Because Morgana has black shield on herself. So you're not going to charm her. See? And now you go back in for the Caitlyn. But by this point, Caitlyn's already hitting you. So oh wait. That's the character's backwards. There's Morgana right there. Yeah. Okay. I'm a little bit backwards. Let me rethink about this. Caitlyn eat away. Is that what happened? Yeah. Okay. So Caitlyn is standing right here and ease back into this brush right here. And she also gets the black shield from Morgana. So let me go back and reverse a little bit of what I was saying. Morgana doesn't have black shield right now because Morgana plays black shield on Caitlyn. So when you charm Morgana, you shouldn't really be thinking about Caitlyn because we can't really interact with Caitlyn for a second or two. Like, technically, black shield lasts for 5 seconds, right? So your immediate focus should not be on trying to charm the Caitlyn. Should just be on applying as much CC as quickly as possible to this Morgana. So literally, we could charm, run into her, and then just immediately W her. Don't even go for the Caitlyn. Just charm, run, W right on her. Because what happens is if we charm her, then we can potentially go like... We still haven't used E. So right now we would have already done the knock-up, and so we could be using our first E, which gives us shield, right? So right here we would have already knocked her up. We would be landing right now, and we could just immediately E onto Kalista, or we could E onto Graves, either one. And then we would have second charge of E. Like right about now, right? So you would have been able to take like one auto from Caitlyn, which would have burned like the first part of your shield, and then you could get second part of your shield. But look, your second shield is up right now because you waited so long to use it. And so now you're actually going to die from the Caitlyn before you get the second part of your shield. I like the decision that these two make to actually just kill the Morgana here. It's obviously the right call because Caitlyn did E into the brush. So there's no way to so now Caitlyn's only chance in this scenario is to go for the all-in and try to get something with headshots onto Kalista. And so all Kalista actually has to do is kind of just back out. Graves has like massive damage right now. He's level 7. Caitlyn's level 6. So we've beat Caitlyn to levels out of the jungle, which is really astounding. And so Graves definitely, like, even though he did use some of his cooldowns just now, he's still going to be able. Caitlyn has no mana, you know. It's literally just boiling down to headshots at this point. So Kalista can just back out. The problem that I actually have with this Kalista play is actually sort of like walking back in and giving Caitlyn the ability to make a play because Caitlyn has no escape right now. And even if we didn't see that Caitlyn E'd, because I missed that the first couple times I watched it as well, even if we're assuming that Caitlyn is E, she doesn't have the mana to. And Graves is red buff, so there's no escape for her anyways. Like, even if she's able to, like, walk up here, E Graves, you know, to go back in this direction, she'd land maybe, like, right here or something, right? With E, which would slow Graves, but Graves still has red buff, which means she'd still be slowed when she's running away. And at that point, her only option is to path, like, this way. She can't actually path up through river because that puts her still almost in auto-attack range of Graves. So it's too easy for him to chase her down. The way that she's able to delay her death is by going this way. But then because she had red buff burning for 3 seconds, Graves can actually catch up to that, especially because he has the mana to E off a cooldown. So there's no way that Caitlyn lives even if she has E, but she doesn't. So Kalista doesn't need to walk up and threaten to give this Caitlyn anything. Especially, like, autoing towards her is really weird. If you're going to auto her, auto away from her. And so what ends up happening is, like, she gets, like, that last spear and rinse right before that auto attack animation plays. Like, watch this again. Right before that plays, and that was a headshot from Caitlyn. Oh no, the headshot was the damage before. And then it took that one auto. The next auto would have actually killed her. So did Kalista rend here because she knew that Caitlyn was dead, or did Kalista rend here because it was a last ditch in an effort to survive where she didn't think that she would die so fast? And so that's my question here. And I feel like the Kalista didn't calculate damage output. Okay, the play here is to let the wave reset. No, it's not. I didn't see that the minions were grouped under the tower. I thought that they were just walking normally. Graves helps Kalista shove the wave into the tower. And you know that the enemy bot lane can't respond. Graves has mana. Even though he did just use Q, he'll have it again. And then Kalista is obviously okay at shoving waves. She has mana to use Q and E freely. So the two of them shove waves, and that way Rammus is decentivized to gank this, even if Rammus was going to gank this in the first place. And you have some relative level of vision, like if he tries to come through here, you have vision, and you have some vision in the river, even though I still think this ward is bad. But you would be able to see it, and so Kalista could sort of plan accordingly and just not let Rammus get that Q onto her. Graves would still have red buff, which fucks Rammus over super hard, and so I don't think that Rammus would actually show up into the lane. So you get a free push.
Thanks, Riku. Real cold in there. Self-control is for star-nerds.
So Rammus wasn't even going to show up, so you have to shove the wave. Because what happens if you don't shove the wave? Your minion wave was grouping next to your tower, right? They group there to hit a couple minions under the tower. So that means that your wave is naturally going to shove towards the enemy. And we know that we can't actually just go kill them. Even though we've been able to with help from Graves, and they kind of played like a stupid early level play, right? So we've been able to find stuff that we shouldn't be able to find. But we can't actually just go fight them. Like, look, we don't even see Caitlyn's back off of this. We don't see what item that she just bought. But look what she has. She has BF, Doran's Cull, and potentially something else after this. Maybe this could be another longsword, maybe 2 longswords. I don't know how much gold she has right now. Maybe even pickaxe if she's going Infinity Edge first. Kalista has Cutlass. So we're not really going to be able to fight Caitlyn here. Even though you have some tankiness, it's not enough to just itemize into armor and HP and stuff. Like that will help you against Caitlyn to some extent, but you still have Morgana's damage to contend with. So it even has like, even just going tank has diminishing returns on your first item. Not diminishing returns. I just mean it's not super efficient. It's not like you're playing like fucking. Let's say that they have pike support, and then you have this armor and HP. That feels like really good buy if you have that. Because then it's like, okay, you definitely can't do anything to me at this point. But because they have magic damage here, and you don't have any MR, you're still going to take a ton of damage. So what can end up happening is you can't actually fight them, and your wave is shoving towards them, and you can't do anything about that. So then what ends up happening is they can set up a freeze, which is probably not going to permanently freeze, depending on minion RNG, but they can set up a freeze right here. And now what happens? Because Rammus, at this point, should be I mean, he's level 6, but we don't see. Oh, I guess he did just make a play top, so we saw him recently. So he's level 6. Um, he's not exactly like Graves is kind of scary right now, but does Graves really scare Rammus without red buff? And I think the answer is no, not really. Rammus can just press W and then Q away, or something like that. So Rammus can actually just come down here and clear this pink that you should have in your tri brush on repeat. Every time Rammus is bottom, he can just walk down here and clear this and force you to just invest 75 gold every single time and take 30 gold from you. Because without this ward, this means that you're even more susceptible to a gank if Kate Morg decide to freeze the lane, and then you have a really hard time unfreezing it. You have to actually commit Graves into bottom to unfreeze the lane because Kalista, Rakan don't have enough wave clear to do it at any sort of distance, so you need Graves' abilities to actually shove the wave into the tower. So you have to commit that. And so because Graves has to commit bottom, Rammus can actually go top and look for a play here. Obviously, Shen just died. So Rammus can actually just, wherever he is right now, I don't know if he recalled, I don't know what he's doing, but Rammus could look to come off a fountain and just go right back to top lane if his bot lane sets up a freeze here, knowing that Graves has to go bottom. So Rammus just gets another free gank top. Now, Warwick should have been able to win the lane a little bit harder than he did, but even with Warwick kind of losing the lane to Shen, Rammus like back-to-back ganking Shen, like Shen just gets back to lane and then dies like 20 seconds later to another gank. That's going to really put Warwick ahead. And Warwick's got Tiamat, so you can deny Shen a ton of minions in the meantime. And if they get a shove, then they can take Rift. And then we can look to transition Rift into other things around the map. So then Galio starts to become very scary to you. If mid tower is broken, then Galio starts to become a big threat to you in bottom lane. And all of those other things as well, just like you're giving the enemy team options of things they could do. All because you don't shove the wave before, like Kalista doesn't shove the wave with Graves before she recalls. So the enemy sets up a freeze, and then all of those things are just outcomes that can occur because the enemy team should freeze here. Caitlyn should just freeze this wave.
The universe tends towards chaos. I'm just helping it along.
Look. See how this detail doesn't really matter? But notice how I said, look, 2 of your minions like stopped right here to auto something under your tower. 2 minions stopped to auto. So what ended up happening? Did you just see this melee slap this range creep one time? Like, let me rewind this. Pay attention.
I'm just helping
it's gonna be this minion right here. It's gonna be this minion. And so this melee is gonna walk up and slap this range creep right here.
Along.
See how I just did that? And now what ends up happening is that just because of the minions, 2 minions like stopped right here. It was these 2 minions that stopped to hit something. Or it might have been the 2 minions from this wave. I'm not exactly sure. But either way, yeah, it was the 2 melees off of the previous wave that already existed. But because of that, it actually put the minions a little bit closer to your side. Just a little bit. Like if we were to split this lane in half, and so I'm not a perfect artist, but let's pretend for a second. This is like the halfway point, right? You can tell how the minions are meeting on your side of the minion wave. And you can say, next, there's casters behind this line. So what do you mean it's meeting on this side? We don't count the minion line as like where the casters stand. We count the minion line as where the melee stand. And so their melee, look, it's meeting yours and it's about to slap this minion right here. So the minion line is, put this in a different color, the minion line is right here. This is the minion line. So the minion line's actually on your side of the lane, which means that it's going to shove. And we knew that it was going to shove anyways, because when I saw the last minion wave, I saw 2 of the melees group up and slap like a caster under the tower. And just that little delay results in this. And this little thing doesn't seem like anything, but what it means is that you have a push that you cannot control. And so Morgana should look to enhance this as much as possible, and so Morgana should not even last hit a creep. If she last hits a creep, it's really bad. She should just stay here and do nothing, just absorb the XP, because if that happens, the lane shoves in. And that's how they set up the freeze. Morgana has to give up the CS here. You can see that your minions now are really clustering and starting to aggro many of the same targets. But look how Caitlyn just comes back in and shoves the wave. Like, Caitlyn could have just let that come crash in and then frozen it, then you would have been so fucked. Like, what do you even do at that point? You know, so I really hate, oh my god, I really hate this Caitlyn just coming back in and shoving it. Because she can apply pressure to you under the tower, but she's already died to ganks a few times. And so, from her perspective, she should realize that Graves is really prioritizing bottom. Like, obviously, red team is playing for top and Warwick, like with the 3-man that they just did a second ago, and Graves has been bottom like 2 or 3 times already, right? So, like, they should recognize that Graves is kind of playing for bot, and Rammus is kind of playing for top, and just not shove the wave. They could just set up a freeze. It's so free. So free.
I don't apologize. Doing my thing.
So they're probably just going to look to crash this wave, which makes me really sad they didn't have to do this. That's the because they shut the wave, Graves is able to cover. Yeah, now they're just going to die. That's like... Again, that doesn't mean that you guys are able to fight them or something. I don't know if this is happening and you're like, oh, this means that we're much stronger than them, we can fight them. It doesn't mean that. It means that they have the opportunity to do everything right. They just didn't.
Perfection doesn't exist, except for my hair. Ooh, inside.
I don't mind doing this. I kind of mind doing that.
Sometimes we agents of darkness need a break.
Oh, you're basing. So this is okay then. You're just like, oh, I just placed the board and then I'll just try to go back anyways. I don't think board. That's one of the most efficient things you could have done in that space, because at least you're not walking around looking for a good ward spot. So we're able to go back at Knight's Vow. We have Trinket. We're switching red. All this is good. Like, things are going really, really well for us. Did Galio not die from that flash auto? That's kind of weird. I thought it was dead. Just back to the farm simulator here. I mean, Morgana did clear out both of your pinks, so it's almost like they're prepping for drag, but they really can't because like Rammus is going to be able to do that shit. And Caitlyn and stuff, you know, like, it's kind of behind. So. I mean, she's got good CS, but still. It's so easy for you guys to deny, especially because Galio's ahead too. Okay. So, I kind of don't like this pink placement. Not because I don't think you can defend it. I don't like its position relative to the brush. So, something that other players do is they actually usually don't put wards directly in the center of the brush, just due to like how vision works. So you'll see like low elo players will just put it in the middle of the brush because it's aesthetically pleasing. But what that ends up doing is it gives you like equal vision like around, and maybe to here and maybe to like here or something. Whenever you put it in the center. So what you should do whenever you place a ward is consider which direction you want the vision. Like for Tri-Brush, it's all about direction. So if you place the ward in the top, like you did here, what you're saying is, I actually want a little bit less vision on the bottom. So I actually want a little bit less vision here, and some maybe like equal vision on the sides or something. And maybe that's okay, but think about like what's going to happen if they come to clear this ward. So what's going to happen is they're going to place their own little ward like right here in the center, right? So they're going to place their own little ward, and they're going to be able to clear this from a distance, especially because Caitlyn has long range auto, so she can probably stand like right here, or maybe like just inside your range of vision or something, and she can clear this out. I don't really like this because it's kind of hard to defend, because even if they stand right here and try autoing the ward, it's like, it's kind of hard to get onto them. Like you could stand here and you could potentially like debut across the wall and maybe you could clip them. But in that case, like Callista has a pretty hard time actually approaching this fight. And so that's kind of hard. That's a little bit hairy to defend. Overall, what I would like to see is you place the ward like right here instead. And so what this ward says is we don't care so much about this vision. We'll take a little bit less vision here. We'll still get good vision on this side. And then we really don't care about vision through this path. Like Rammus is never going to gank us here, but just for sake of discussion, we can say like, okay, and this is, you know, that's like the vision line cross section there. So we'll get some vision on this area. But what this does is really, so number one, it emphasizes the fact that we want to be looking towards this side, because this Tri-Brush ward is really meant to defend us against ganks from behind Dragon Pit, right? So it kind of says like, okay, we're going to get the maximum amount of vision towards this side, pretty much, almost the maximum amount of vision. And at the same time, it's actually quite hard for the enemy to walk up and take this, because if they go and they place a ward in the center, you know, like they do, they're actually going to have to, instead of walking or standing like way out here like they were able to do before, they're actually now kind of able, or they actually kind of have to walk in maybe to like right here or something, right? And so this is kind of problematic now, because you don't even have to go over the wall anymore at them. You can go over this wall. Like you have option, you could still go over the wall if you really want to. Or you could just walk at them. That's an option. And Callista can enter this position much easier, because it's like she doesn't have to be very close for this to occur, especially if she has her tier 2 boots, which she should have. I think that's usually a rush item on Callista. So if she has this, then you know, she's fast. She has a lot of hops and stuff. So she's almost in auto attack range right now. Like she would only have to path up to like right here, and then she'd be in auto range. And then from there she can kind of just hop them in, you know. And so now it's kind of problematic. And it makes them feel a little bit vulnerable, especially because Graves has ganked them a few times. So you don't really know what kind of like thoughts run through like the minds of like fleas. Like these players are, they're just fucking fleas. They just do the same thing over and over again. So we don't really understand like the thoughts of fleas, but if fleas feel fear, then they would feel fear having to walk that close to your brush when they actually can't have vision in it, because your control ward is knocking out their ward, so they actually don't have vision. And so if Graves actually comes into that brush, they actually don't know about it. So it's actually very hard for them to enter that close to the brush without some sort of assurance that Graves isn't there. I'll stay for this fight and then we'll call it. Just like the enemy could have locked you out of the game so many times, so I don't think that anything that happens after this is a result of your play. I think it's a result of theirs. But I want to see like one fight.
Good guys.
It's all fine. Again, that's just the enemy being like fleas, you know? They just want to fucking pressure, go under the tower, get those dives and those meta games. So obviously
My
you can't do
cloak
that.
is the wind of the seventh moon. Detonation.
Trying to find one fight.
Doing the right thing was. This is.
Was this it? Here's our one fight. Okay. Take a second to think about this. So we do see Rammus. We know that Lux is actually very, very strong right now. Rammus gets the bind. At this point, we're just ahead. We're just so far ahead that we can do whatever we want. The score's 15-6. We have map pressure. They're playing like fleas. We're playing like, I don't really want to say like human beings. Maybe like cavemen or something. Like we're playing the game on some level, and they're being fleas. So like the rest of this game, I just expect you to sort of win this game. It's a very long game, so obviously it gets messy. I don't know why it gets messy. It shouldn't, just judging by how fucking bad they're playing. But I don't want to continue to watch them make mistakes and you be let into the game as a result. So I'm going to call this. That was a pretty good description of Farm Simulator and how Farm Simulator should have played out. And then I also think that I covered some really good points of how the enemy could have actually played situations to make things advantageous for them. So I think that's valuable even to learn from, like what the enemy could do, just in case you're ever in that reverse position. You know how to play that as well. So I'm going to call it there.